stressed. And finally, we'll learn how to manage stress. Okay. So because most of us have been stressed, I think each and every one of us has been stressed. Maybe I'd like to hear from one of you what you think stress is. Anyone? What is stress? Okay, so stress is the reaction we have to excessive pressure or challenging events in our life. Most people would like to define stress as something external, but actually stress is how we react. So stress occurs when the pressure you experience as a person is higher than the resources that you have, or is greater than the resources you have. The resources don't have to be monetary. It can be social, maybe the support system that you have, or it can be your mental resources. How do you cope with stress? So whenever the pressure that you're experiencing is higher than the resources you have, you will always end up stressed. So stress leads to feelings of worry, being tense, you can be fearful, and you can be depressed. So we'll talk about types of stressors. Stressors are the stimuli or the things we experience that lead us to be stressed. So stressors can be internal or external. So for external stressors, I know all of us have experienced them. I'd like maybe one of you to give me an example of an external stressor. Anyone? Because I'm sure all of us have been stressed. What is it outside your body that causes you stress? Yes, so for example, being bullied, that is something that is external. So we call that social interactions. So some of your social interactions will leave you stressed. So for example, it will be maybe you have somebody who bullies you. Maybe you are usually the butt of jokes in your office. And maybe you are faced by somebody who is aggressive. Some of the external stressors can be physical environment. Maybe on your way to work, you get into a matatu and it's very noisy. That can give you stress. You might be in an area where it's too hot. Some people get stressed when they go to Mombasa because it's too hot and their body is not used to that environment. Some people may be stressed if they are in a confined space. Some major life events like the birth of a child, because it changes the status quo in the house, can give you stress. Some like the loss of job and a change in marital status can give you stress as well. You are single, you've been single your life, you know how to live single, and then you get married, you can be stressed, and the opposite can be stressful as well. Some daily hassles like commuting, the hassles of having an unpredictable commute can also give you stress. Mechanical breakdowns, maybe you are supposed to drive to Kisumu and your car breaks down, that can give you stress. You might also be stressed if you lose your keys in the morning. That's a small thing, but to some people it can be stressful. Some internal stressors can also make you stressed. So for example, if your personality, you are the people who are a perfectionist, everything must be done a certain way, you are not willing to be flexible or to bend, you will be stressed in most of the cases. If you are a workaholic, you will be definitely stressed. Some lifestyle choices that we have lead us to stress. They make us more prone to be stressed. So, for example, if you don't have adequate sleep, you have an overloaded schedule, you can get stressed. Some people are very good at negative self-talk. They'll They'll be always pessimistic. They'll see the bad in everything, the negative in everything. As such a person, you are more prone to be stressed. Some people have mind traps. Mind traps are the kind of reasoning that make you blind to options that might be useful to you. So, for example, you might have the mind trap of fortune telling. An event has not occurred, but you can already see the outcome, and most of the time it's usually negative. You might have the mind trap of mind reading. Somebody has not said anything, but you just tell yourself, oh, so-and-so is not talking to me. It must be because he doesn't like me. But usually when you ask, it's not the case. So such mind traps will make you stressed because for each interaction you have, you already predict what the person is going to say, and it's usually negative. So what are the types of stress that we usually experience? We can have negative stress, which is I think most of you assume stress is always negative. Negative stress is also called distress. We also have positive stress, which is called eustress. I know you are wondering how stress can be positive, but imagine yourself, it's maybe a cold or dark day. You are probably in your house watching TV, and you feel something slither across your leg. What will you do? Your fight or flight response kicks in, so you can either run, but you'll always spring into action. That's positive stress. Positive stress provides you with a sense of urgency that is needed for survival. This is the stress when you see a dog chasing you, it will make you run away. That's positive stress. Positive stress is short-term, so you'll experience adrenaline, your heart will race, you'll get palpitations. That is when you are aware of your heart beating, and you'll spring into action. And sometimes you don't even remember the sequence of events that made you leave that stressful environment, but that's positive stress. Negative stress, on the other hand, is usually, most of the time, long-term. It leads to physical symptoms. You might have headaches, you might have stomach upsets, you might have insomnia, which is the inability to sleep. And when distress is prolonged, you exhaust your mental resources, and as such, you will have ill health from the same. So how come some people are less prone to stress? Maybe for example, during this COVID time, how come maybe Mr. Cyrus, whoever that is less stressed than you? Maybe one of you can answer. How come your friend is less stressed than you? What makes them special? Okay, I know you're all thinking it. Each individual has a different mental resources to cope with stress. Each of you has a different childhood experience. You have a different social bank. Maybe you have more friends. Some people are introverts. They have less friends. And some people are religious, and some are not. So depending on the resources that you have, and the way you are nurtured as a person, you'll have the level of stressor that will get you stressed is different from the level of stressor that will get somebody else stressed. In the medical facility, we like to think of it as the nurture versus nature. An example of twins who were, of course, they were born twins, and then they were separated at birth and raised in different parts of the world. The genetics are the same because they were identical, but the way they react to stressors, their personalities, they all rely on on how they were raised, on the tools, the mental tools that they were provided with as they grew, and basically their social bank. So how do we usually react to stress? What is the stress response? So for one, when we encounter a stressor, there's an endocrine response. This is the medical term for the alarm response. So I'll give an example of maybe you are at work and your boss calls you in and tells you, oh, I'm sorry, but we have to let you go. So the alarm response at that time is when your body is encountered with this stressor, what it does, it produces the stress hormones. This include adrenaline, cortisol, and testosterone. Those hormones, they increase your heart rate. They make your palms sweaty. They make your pupils dilated because you want to see nearer, so that you can either fight or run away. So that's the immediate response, alarm response. It usually increases your mental alertness. That's why it's usually a positive stress at that time. After that, if the stressor is not removed, you get into the adaptation phase. The adaptation phase is where the body starts preparing you for long-term stress. So your body realizes, oh, this stressor is not going away. I still don't have a job. What next? So in this phase, this is where for some people you get high sugars being produced in your body, is because your body needs more energy to deal with the stress. It's usually short-term as long as the stressor is done away with. If the stressor does not go away, you enter the exhaustion phase. This is whereby your endocrine system is not releasing hormones that fight stress, so you are not adequately prepared to deal with the stress. And what happens is you are less tolerant to stress. You get progressive mental exhaustion. You can be ill. And then in some people, they actually collapse. So what are some of the symptoms of stress that you can think of? I'm sure all of us have been stressed, so maybe give me 2 answers and I'll go on. Symptoms of stress that you've experienced? Yes, headache? Yes? Yes, you can get muscle pains or any body aches. In medicine, we call it upper and upper syndrome, whereby you come to us, you are sick, you just feel pain here, here, here. It's not very specific, does not fit any diagnosis. So the symptoms of stress can be physical. So you can get the headaches, the aches and pains. You can get dizziness, sweating, breathlessness, difficulty in sleeping. You can get digestion changes. I'm sure some of us, when we have exams or an important life event, some people might get stomach upsets before the event occurs. Some of the symptoms of stress can be mental, where you have lack of concentration. You can get memory lapses. You can have difficulty in making decisions. You can be confused and disoriented, and you can have panic attacks. A panic attack is similar to the alarm response, whereby your heart starts beating fast, you are breathless, you start sweating. You can get behavioral symptoms of stress, which include appetite change, increased drug use, fidgeting, hypochondria. So hypochondria is whereby you constantly feel there's something wrong with you. So you are constantly seeking medical attention. And in the long run, it's just that you're stressed. You can have emotional symptoms of stress, like bouts of low moods. You can be impatient. You can be shouting at people, fits of rage. So for example, if you're driving and you've all used the Kenyan roads, you can see some people shouting at each other. Most of the time it's just stress. They're exhibiting emotional symptoms of stress. You can also have deterioration of personal hygiene and appearance. So stress alone is not synonymous with illness, but it can lead to some illnesses, like in the cardiovascular system, you can ulcers, and you can have migraines and even depression. So how do we manage stress? An example of how you manage your stress? Anyone? How do you usually manage your stress? Because you've all been stressed. Sorry? You take a bath. Okay, yes, that can work. You can take a walk. Okay. So for stress management, I'll give an example of maybe you're going to work, you're in a matatu, and there's traffic jam. So at that point, how do you usually feel? So the first step, because that's a stressful environment, the first step is, you are aware that you are stressed? Are you aware that you are stressed? Are you aware of what is stressing you? You must have insight that, yes, I'm stressed because of this situation. And because you're already in traffic, you can't change it. You're already there. So what you can do is find a balance. How can you cope with that stressor at that time? So that's the ABC strategy, whereby you have to have awareness of what is stressing you. You have to have a balance on how to cope with the stressor. And finally, you have to have control of the event. In the case of where there's traffic jam, because you're already in the traffic jam, you cannot avoid it. Usually, if you know there's a stressor, you can avoid it. So maybe the next day you'd leave home earlier. You'll rearrange maybe the route that you take. And it doesn't have to be the daily commute that has a problem. It might be at work. So as part of avoiding, you can do a to-do list, which will also help you plan better. If you cannot avoid, try to alter. You can, if it's work, a deadline, you can ask for a longer deadline. And if there's nothing you can really do, you have to accept. And once you accept that you're in this situation that is stressful, then you can find avenues for relieving stress. So for example, you can phone a friend. That is called ventilation. So ventilation is whereby you talk to your friends. Talking not only gives you catharsis, which is letting out the negative thoughts, it also gives you a new perspective, whereby your friend might give you a different outlook on this stressful event. You can also accept and learn from that mistake, if it was a mistake that led you to be stressed. And finally, after accepting, you can adapt. So for some people, maybe in your house you like things to be done a certain way. Maybe you like it to be vacuumed twice a day, and it's not being done. Or you don't have enough time to do the vacuuming twice. By adapting, you have to adjust your standards and redefine your success. Is success having the house vacuumed twice, or is once just okay? So as you remember, stress is how you react to pressure. Stress is usually the stressor is external, but stress is internal. So you have to change your thinking in order to deal with stress. So the first thing you do is reframe. You have to reframe how you look at the stressor. Interpret the stressful situation in different ways and pick the one you like and focus on that. Focus on your strengths, so that is positive thinking. Change your behavior. In changing your behavior, your general behavior, one of the things that helps you deal with stress and reduces your threshold to stress is being assertive. So to be assertive is to be self-confident and to have high self-esteem. So the key to being assertive is practicing your verbal and nonverbal communication skills. Learn when to say no, and you have to realize that no is a complete sentence. Don't ruminate over how people will take your no. If you feel it's a no, say it's a no. If somebody is adding more work to your already overloaded schedule, you are allowed to say no, and that's a complete sentence. So an assertive person is a person who respects themselves and others, is a person who takes responsibility for their actions and choices, is a person who asks openly for what they want, and is a person who is disappointed if the want is denied, and is not reliant on the approval of others. So by being assertive, you'll experience self-control and you'll be less self-conscious. In changing your behavior, you can get organized. Maybe you are stressed because you are not meeting deadlines. You can come up with a list of what should be done, what you'd like to do, and what must be done. And in most of the instances, you end up doing what should be done and what you must do. By being flexible, you can live out what you'd like to do. We already talked about ventilation, which is a problem shared is a problem halved. Humor is also another way to deal with stress. We say laughter is the best medicine. So if you like, you can watch something that is funny, and you can go to your funny friends. You can also crack positive jokes. That has been shown to reduce stress. You can use diversion and distraction, which is walking, taking a warm bath. That is distraction. You remember your problem is still there, but by distracting yourself, you give your brain more time to come up with better solutions. Another way of managing stress is to change your lifestyle. So you have to start eating healthy, reduce coffee because coffee is a stimulant and it worsens the symptoms of stress like increasing your heart rate. This also applies to energy drinks. You can exercise. Exercise has been shown to increase the release of endorphins, which are the feel-good hormones. It also lowers blood pressure. You can also make sure you get enough sleep. Enough sleep makes you more relaxed and gives you more energy to work on the stressor. It's also hard to concentrate or cope when tired. Another thing you can do is follow up with your interests. If you like running, you can do that. If you like shopping, you can do that. If you like singing, you can do that. And if you are religious, you can worship with others. That's a way of relieving your stress. So I'll give you a simple exercise. I want you to choose either A or B of these statements. So for statement A, I'll read it. People have so many ulterior motives, it's impossible to determine who actually likes you and who doesn't. I repeat. People have so many ulterior motives, it's impossible to determine who actually likes you and who doesn't. Is this true for you? Just note it in your head or book. Statement B, how you treat people largely determines whether they like you or not. How you treat people largely determines whether they like you or not. So at the back of your mind, you know whether you chose A or B. This is a simple exercise to tell you what your locus of control is. Locus of control is how much of the things that happen to you do you attribute to external forces. So if you chose A, you have an external locus of control, meaning when things happen to you, you assume it's fate, you have nothing to do with it, your input could not have changed it. If you chose B, you have an internal locus of control. It means that you accept the outcome is because of something that you did. Studies have shown that the people who have external locus of control are more likely to be stressed, and they have a low tolerance for stress. But you can learn to have an internal locus of control by some of the exercises that we talked about. Some of the alternatives that are available for stress management include counseling and psychotherapy, relaxation, meditation, massage, aromatherapy. There's been research that has shown that having lavender scent on you will relieve stress. There is religious therapy, which is equivalent to counseling. That's all I have, unless you have questions. Yes. Stress is not the same as depression, because stress can, however, lead to depression. Depression is a feeling of sadness, loss of sense of worth, no joy. You have no joy in doing the activities that brought you joy before, and it has to happen for more than 2 to 3 weeks to be termed as depression. And in depression, we have severities. There is mild depression, suicidal ideation. Have I answered you? Okay. Yes? So I'll start with how one can tell that they're depressed. So you'll definitely know when your moods are low, you don't want to wake up, you are sleeping longer than usual, or you are not getting enough sleep. In the past, maybe you used to exercise and it gave you joy, and nowadays you feel you can't move. You feel like you don't have energy to do the simple activities that you used to do. Even showering is questioning your existence. And you feel suicidal. Those are the symptoms of stress. Another thing that might make you realize you're depressed is maybe the state of your room or your house. When you were normal, your house was neat, and suddenly all your dirty clothes are on the floor, plates, you've not washed any plate. That's a sign of depression. People die from depression either by suicide, to have an accident. Yes. The most common stressors in the youth. Number one is not fitting in. You feel like you're not fitting in with your clan, because everybody desires community. It's part of us as humans. So if you feel you're not fitting in, if you are different, if you have an illness, and in some youths, maybe the ones who finished school, it's the lack of employment that's a huge stressor. It's a responsibility. We call it, in Africa, we call it the black tax, that you've been educated up to university, you're expected to have employment and to support your siblings, but you don't have employment, but the responsibilities are still there. I find that that is a major stressor for the youth. Also relationships, yes. Any other question? You cannot avoid stress, but you can manage it, and you can reduce what stresses you. Not everything should stress you. Not everything is you can control, because stress is just how you react to a stressor. What stopped suddenly stop talking to you? Will this matter in 5 years? If it doesn't, let it go. Breathe out, breathe in, let it go. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Curity, for handling a very, very important topic. Stress and depression is really, those two have been affecting not only our members here and many people out there. I have also seen in your handout, you are pasted somewhere here. So should you have any health challenge, you can always go to them for medical care. They have a number of services they are offering. They are listed there: general consultation, laboratory, many other things. And they are not based very far from here. Dr. Curity, we are also streaming. A lot of people are following us online, including our members. Your presentation, which you did here, you can still find it in YouTube. Thank you very much for finding time to come to this seminar. And this will be like a collaboration. We'll be inviting you from time to time when we have seminars, not only for the youth, even for the adults.